kind of warm out. Yeah, guys, we're going through a major heat wave right now here in Northern California. Yeah, just got to deal with it. We complain about all the cold weather in the early months of the year, and now we get the excessive heat. We complain about that, but yeah, it's hot. It is summer, and I thought to start this video out, I would give you guys my 2024 edition of summer bait picks or selections for the California Delta. Now, the Delta's been fishing funky for a few years. We know that, and it's frustrating, but at the same time, I still think the Delta will rebound eventually. I still believe there are good fish in the system, and I still believe there are some fun days to have out there for sure. So though I've kind of talked some smack about the Delta, and it definitely has not had the best reputation as of the past few years, I think it's still an amazing place to go fishing, just to go out there and, you know, see the sights that the Delta offers. It's truly a one-of-a-kind, super unique fishery. That'll never get lost with me personally. So that all to say, I still enjoy going out to the Delta, and that is what we're going to do tomorrow. So right now it is the night before our trip, and it's going to be another hot one. I think we're going to actually get up to 110 tomorrow. So I'll be getting up really early, hopefully on the water even before sunrise, and getting off by 11:30, 12. But like I said, to start this video off, I'm going to give you guys my 10 bait selections going into the Delta tomorrow. So little disclaimer, and I think this goes without saying, these aren't all set in stone. You know, some have history, some are new, some of the colorations are new, and of course there's a handful of baits in the tackle trunk that aren't rigged up right now. 10 rods may seem excessive, but if you guys have been out on the Delta, you know you can throw just about anything out there at any time of year. The amount of baits and the selections is probably the hardest for me, at least, on the California Delta, but these are the 10 I'm starting with. So number one, we've got a new bait by Berkley. It is the Clatter craw. Really unique design. Already comes pre-rigged on that jig head. It's almost like a little hybrid, like a skipping jig and a football head. It's got the tiny weed guard. It's got these little tiny rattles built into the claws. You guys know Delta, that Delta red everyone talks about, that crawfish abundance that big bass munch on. That just looks good in areas where there aren't as many weeds, maybe some riprap, maybe some pockets, maybe the base of some tule clumps. That could be a player. So gonna give that a shot tomorrow. Number two, you know, and this is inspired, I would say, by you guys. Talked about the Deltons in previous videos this year, and I've seen multiple comments going over the abundance of bait fish, and maybe that explains why in the past year or so the spinner bait has actually been more productive than the bladed jig. But the idea that there's more bait fish in the system, I've got a unrigged or naked Cull shad. It's a 5-inch, which I like it being naked because I can put it on a weedless hook. Delta in the summer, there's gonna be a lot of grass, so you need a lot of weedless presentations. 5-inch swim bait will be on deck. Oh, and by the way, I'm sure you guys can tell how hot it is. It looks like I'm being interrogated right now as I get these massive beads of sweat. Number three, this is a staple if you go out on the Delta, specifically in the summertime, but just a little punch rig. I say little, it's not little. It's actually a big punch rig, a 1.5 ounce weight. Got 2 bobber stops there holding that guy in place, 3-aught flipping hook, and a little pit boss is our punch bait. And again, these are just the starters. You know how starters go in sports or whatever? Not playing good, you just sub them out. So that could get substituted out for a different creature bait or maybe a different color, and that pretty much goes to say with all these baits I'm mentioning. Number four, something that you guys, again, have kind of harped on me to throw more of, especially out on the Delta in the summer when you're fishing around grass. That's a swim jig. Had one trip where we caught some better quality fish on the swim jig. This is kind of just a green pumpkin, purple bluegill imitator swim jig, and then we've got a meaty chunk on the back, something that, I'm gonna be honest, I think it looks super goofy, but I think other than the fact that it may look goofy, it's more important when it's in the water and you get that flapping action of the appendages, but you also get this free swinging motion side to side. Gotta remember, sometimes the presentation, the action of a bait is a lot more important than what it actually looks like. So got a swim jig for tomorrow as well. Next up, going with a bladed jig. Just to mix it up, we're gonna try a fiery red-orange bladed jig with a paddle tail. Maybe something they don't see a whole ton of in the summer. I think this is maybe more of a popular color in the spring. But again, if the color doesn't seem like it's really getting bit well, or they're short striking it, maybe we change the trailer, maybe we change the color, you just don't know. One other note, and this is the second bait in a row where I've got a little tiny bobber stopper right here. Got a few questions about that in the past. Just adds a little bit more weedlessness to your bait. I tie a knot, the Jimmy Houston knot for all fluorocarbon applications, and you end up with 3 tag ends. I really like that knot, but those 3 tag ends can kind of get stuck on little stringy grass or moss here and there. And that bobber stop, it doesn't completely eliminate it from getting hung up, but it certainly helps a lot. So little bobber stop right before your knot. It's a good little trick to have for some moving baits when you're fishing around grass. Summer topwater, you gotta love it, but the Chapo the last 3-4 years has been a staple out on the Delta in the summertime. You can get some really big fish to come up and eat it. Usually just go with a bone color if the water's clear. If we get some dirtier water, it might go to a black. That's the big boy, that's the 120 right there. We'll give that a shot tomorrow, probably at first light. Another summer staple, specific to the summer, I feel like. Really a bait that you may not get as many bites on it, but the ones you do tend to be a little bit better throughout the course of a day. Just a frog. Got a poppin' frog here. That'll be for more open water, pockets. And then, of course, if we start fishing mats, cheese, stuff like that, we'll switch to a standard. But I like a little poppin' frog, especially first thing in the morning to get the day going. So we're gonna start with that. Oh, the sad thing about this all too is I mentioned I have other baits in the box. I probably, if I had the space, I could probably add another 4 rods, have 14 rods tomorrow to start the day, and it'd be fine with me. This bait right here. Now, this one doesn't typically make the summer bait list or selection for the Delta, but I think it's been a player pretty much all year. I'm gonna continue using it until the Delta says to stop. Little square bill right here. Actually, this is a square bull, shallow crankbait. This has been my go-to color for the Delta. It's like green craw with a little bit of orange in the back. I think it represents not only little bluegill, but crawfish, baitfish, whatever you want it to mimic. I think it's a color that gets ingrained in these fish's minds. It's a good color to eat. So I've got that with us for tomorrow as well. Number 9, we're getting there, Going with buzzbait. Now this is just a single blade buzz, little paddle tail trailer on the back, but I could throw a Bobby D buzz on there, a quad buzz, something with a little bit more clack to it as well. But a buzzbait I think in the summertime is a must-have bait, especially for the kicker fish. I said that about the frog fish and really a lot of topwater fish. I mean, if you catch fish on a buzzbait, again, not as many bites as a worm or something like that, but in general, your bite size, your average fish is gonna be better. So gotta have a buzzbait with us. Plus, does it get any better than having a fish blow up on a big chunk of metal? I don't think so. And last but certainly not least, because as we know, the Delta, is beautiful as it looks, as promising as it seems, sometimes they can be really, really picky. And all the baits in the world, all the rods, all the gear you have, doesn't matter. And in that situation, you just need a worm. Just got a weightless worm right here, wacky style. This rod right here could have a drop shot on it as well. But when the fishing gets tough and you ain't getting bit on any of that stuff, it's time to pull out the worm. So guys, those are my 10 bait selections for tomorrow. Summer bass fishing out on the California Delta. And like I mentioned, it is summer, it is hot. So I think the conditions will be very representative of a summer day out on the California Delta. Other than that, I am going to probably get a early bedtime tonight so we can get up bright and early tomorrow morning, try to beat the heat wave or at least get out there when it's a little bit cooler in the day. Hopefully the Delta is kind to us. And yeah, we'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Alrighty, good morning everybody. Can we not all agree that this is just like such a beautiful sight to see? Could you ask for anything better? Just about 6 o'clock. Made a pretty good run, about a 40-minute run to a spot I've had a little success in the past. Wanted to try it out today, get started here, and then we'll go from there. We're on an outgoing tide right now, pretty strong tide. That current was ripping pretty good this morning. And also on the way, like we were talking about, saw a lot of bait fish flicking around. When that tide starts to drop, that's when you see a lot of those bait fish start kind of going crazy. So hopefully they're in the mood for at least one of our baits today. Ooh, had a little guy come try to get the frog. Maybe just a hair quick on the trigger. I don't think it was that big, but a frog bite. Just give me 1 second. I think it's just a little guy. I think. seem better. I gave that one some time too, but that easily could have been a 8-inch or 2. This popping frog is catching way too much grass. There's actually a lot more grass here than I thought there'd be. It's completely different, to be honest. This one little stretch that I wanted to fish, there was like none of this last year. Goes to show how much the delta can change in a year. Go with something a little more weedless, or we'll come through this grass a little better. Yeah, last year for the Yakabass West Coast Championship tournament, I came to this spot, and yeah, I didn't do very good in that tournament, but I must have caught 30, 40 fish out of this one little stretch in a couple of days, maybe more. Nothing big, but 13 to 16-inch fish, and a lot of open water. That was later in the summer too, but right now it's completely choked with grass, so probably not an area these fish are going to relate to right now as much. I think that clean bottom last year kind of helps, but whatever. Just move on, find something else. Always gotta double check. So this is what's eating the frog. Oops, that wasn't even that bad. It was a little keeper, but what'd we say? Pretty much when in doubt, throw a little worm. Yeah. Damn. Not even 7 o'clock, and the rear camera with the sunshade just went out. There we go. Finally got one. Had a lot of bites, I think, about this size. That one just finally ate the frog. He ate it too. Like, no question about it. Man, these hooks are sharp. Alright. Little meatball on the frog. So that's a couple bites on the frog, on the worm, weightless worm. Nothing on the moving stuff. What does that tell me? Maybe they're not in the chasing mood right now. We'll see. Happy to get a bite though and land it. A frogfish. Mainly had the scent to the legs and the bottom part of the frog. Little baby bounced it out of the water. That one was great on the bank. Like, great on the rocks. Fun fish. They're not like micros, but certainly nothing to brag about. Kind of makes sense though, right? Frog, probably some of the best frog fishing days I've had are when the temps are just incredibly hot. Not to say that they won't bite something else, but so far that's what seems to be the deal. And again, when that tide gets low, gotta imagine these fish are gonna bury themselves in the grass, and that punch rod will have to be a factor. Like I said, with these 10 rods, the 10 Delta bait selections, it's not like I think every single one of those is gonna get bit in a day, but there should be at least 1 or 2 of those presentations throughout the day that is the most efficient that'll get bit, and that's why I always want to have them ready so you can, you know, throw at a target that would require that specific technique or that bait. Just make you a lot more efficient on the water. Oh my gosh. That was a decent one. A decent one that just came up for it. Oh man. Yeah, they don't want to chase right now. Just fished that whole stretch with moving baits, and I bet you if I turn around and go through it, I'll get some bites. see, I just came right through the same section. They don't want to chase, man. Oh, there's another fat one. Okay, well, maybe I will be throwing the worm a little bit more. I mean, if you think about it, the frog and the worm are similar in that they both sit in the strike zone for much longer than a lot of baits. Like, obviously the worm slowly floats to the bottom, but that frog just sits on top. And I think that's kind of the bite right now. Keep a bait in front of their face long enough, and you'll trick it. For now. There we go. Oh. Hey, I'll take you. I'll take bites on the delta. Yeah, they're getting smaller now. It's not the idea. Little guys are poking at it. Actually, it's coming through the rocks pretty good. Really big fish. First kind of moving bait bite I've had today, but I do think that actually landed a fish's head. I can't say for sure that he chased it down. A swim jig fish. Man, I've been throwing the swim bait, bladed jig, little buzz bait, little chopo, even threw the crank for a little while, but only moving bait bites so far are swim jig. And what's the one difference between the swim jig, or at least the way I'm working it, and those baits is kind of feathering it and keeping it in the strike zone a little bit longer like these fish want it. They just need a little time to eat it today, I guess. Good timing there, fish. Oh, man. Fish was swimming right with my jig. Didn't know I had him. Little swim jig. A lot of you guys out there were the ones that told me to start throwing this again, so thank you to you guys. Get the assist on all these fish, swim jig fish that is. Dude, striper, love the cull shad. Caught so many striper as a bycatch on the cull shad in the delta. Not complaining, just saying. There was a little bass right there. quick release on the unrigged Cull shad. Felt like this made sense out here. My goodness gracious. Ambitious little fella. Dang, came off. Keep losing the better ones. What the heck? Oh my god, I was just about to leave. No! Dang it. Had a punch fish. Leave meaning about to give up on the punch. I just made a million flips and finally got bit. Well, now I'm gonna have to try it a little longer. Everything seems right for the punch. I'm surprised that was our first bite on it all day, especially now with low tide and some good looking mats. Got some healthy grass, right? What we don't want to see after this missed fish is a casting montage, because that means that fish was a fluke. Alrighty guys, it is 1:30. I stayed out there about an hour and a half too long. It is toasty. Oh my gosh, it's hot. But thankful to be off the water, get the AC rolling. But yeah, again, today's video was really just summer bass fishing out on the California Delta with my California Delta bait picks for the summer. You figure with that many rods, that many baits, plus backups and the other tackle boxes, one should work. I think this is a given. As of right now, expectations out on the Delta aren't super high. I still think it's a good place just to go get bit, but as far as catching, you know, really big fish and multiple big fish, not so much anymore. But got here super early this morning, got launched before sunrise, made a pretty good run, about a 40-minute run up north. Started out throwing some top water, nothing on the Chopo, nothing on a buzz bait. Went to that little poppin' frog, had a few small ones blow up on it and miss. Mixed and match baits, which is again what I do personally, especially out here on the Delta. You got 10 rods at the ready, so mix and match, go as fast as you can, but still efficiently throw the right bait at the right time, fish what's in front of you, and really could not get anything. Bladed jigs, swim bait, like moving baits, no bites, no takers, not even small ones, but ended up finally connecting with a few frogfish. Always fun to get a few frogfish on the board no matter what the size. I did end up picking up the worm, the weightless worm, just in case I was fishing overfish. Always want to check if you feel like there's fish in the area and you're throwing some fast stuff, maybe just pick up something a little slower and see if you're fishing overfish, and I definitely was. Getting bites on the 5-inch worm, wacky style, and from that bite all the way to the frog bite, it really told me that these fish needed something in place in the strike zone long enough for them to kind of make up their mind and eat it. I think the frog and the worm were a perfect 1-2 punch to catch some fish in the morning. That tide started to get pretty low. It was moving out. Decided to make a move and picked up the old trusty swim jig, and got a few bites on the swim jig. I think actually one of our better fish of the day was on the swim jig. And again, not as fast as like a bladed jig or the swim bait. That swim jig kind of just feathering it in, kind of hovering it, undulating it through the water, and I think that allowed the fish to get a better look at it and eat it. Tide kept moving out, wind picked up a bit. Did have one on the punch, but came off, and that was it for the punch bite. And the only other bite that was a little bit surprising, but not so much at the same time, was the swim bait bite. I think we just got in an area with the tide being so low, we kind of fished this grass flat that was a lot shallower on the low tide, had that wind, and throwing that swim bait, that 5-inch Cull shad, weedless of course, was getting some nice bites. I think I lost a couple of nice ones, caught a couple of small ones on it. Yeah, just some bonus fish right at the end for what would have been a pretty average right now, I think, day of summer bass fishing out on the California Delta. You know, getting some numbers, a couple keepers here and there, no giants. Of course, in the kayak, you're pretty limited to where you can fish, so I'm sure it's different for guys with boats, but yeah, not a terrible day. Junk fishing for the most part, and that is really the point of having so many rods. Like I mentioned, at the ready, you want to be able to fish the conditions, be able to maximize your time out on the water, and really try to utilize every weapon you have to piece together a pattern as to what these fish are doing. But 1:30, 105 degrees outside. So yeah, I think it's time to go. As always, guys, I thank you for watching, for coming along, and I will see you guys in the next one.